Hey, what is up, everybody? Jeremy here, and guys, I'm very excited for the guest we have with us today. We have Stefani Boyd, and she is doing some pretty incredible things in the mortgage brokership area, and also in the real estate world. And she has an incredible story too. And I was very excited to hear about her pom pom Lola. So, Stefani, thank you so much for hanging out with me today.
Hi, Jeremy. Thank you so much for having me.
So you have a pretty incredible story about how you got into the business that you're in now. So tell us your story, Stefani.
Well, so my original job, my first job as a grown-up was actually as a criminal investigator. And so I worked for the public defender's office doing felonies and investigating until my soul just couldn't take much more of that, and I went and joined my family's real estate company.
Oof, I could imagine that'd be pretty tough on you to like do that day after. Like I sold life insurance for a little bit, and like having those like conversations about like, so you're gonna die, you should buy this. That was a tough day to have.
Yeah, for sure. And I met with so many families who had a loved one in jail facing serious felony charges and, not knowing if they were going to be subject to a three strikes case and be in prison for the rest of their life so I got to meet a lot of amazing and interesting people, and actually every single one of our three strikes cases was dismissed or reduced significantly. We only lost one person to a life sentence. So
Wow.
yeah, it got a little dicey at times. I was one of the only investigators who refused to carry a firearm. So everyone else is going out into neighborhoods investigating, murders and robberies, and they're armed with 9 millimeters. And I just decided that I didn't really want that energy, and I was there to help people, and people were happy to see me, and I never, thank goodness, ever found occasion to need a firearm. So it was a lot less stress when I joined the family business, although real estate can get dicey in its own right. But it's I've never been felt like I needed a gun in a real estate.
I I understand, and you've seen a lot of success in the real estate world. I guess what do you attribute that to? Like, I guess what things do you feel like you've personally focused on to get good at what you do?
Well, it's really education is something I've had a lifelong love of. So I actually started college at 16. Um, I was a teen
Oh
mom.
my gosh, that's so young to start college.
Yes, I was motivated by a baby. So I,
I get it.
yes, gave me all of the really for my whole entire life. That's been the driving motivation. So I graduated high school early, started college at 16, studied criminal justice, and then I have been back to school. I actually went for a total of 24 years to City College, off and on. Studied sign language, art, real estate, criminal justice, philosophy, pretty much everything. I just love learning. So, real estate and mortgages are just kind of an extension of that lifelong love of learning. Guess I'm a nerd. I love the rules and regulations and the calculations and just all of the ins and outs. And there's definitely a lot of details to absorb in this business.
Well, Stephanie, this is kind of an off the wall question, but I'd love your viewpoint on this. You mentioned like how you've helped people in criminal investigating. You mentioned making the decision to graduate school at 16 and care for your child as well as going to school, and then also at the same time you're helping people now. It seems like putting other people first and helping them seems to be a big part of how you've done what you've done in your life.
I think karma is real. And so I do definitely wake up every day and try to be a positive influence in my world around me. So that was one of the things I initially loved about real estate, and I still continue to love, is helping first-time buyers. So my family business was built on helping people with bad credit repair their credit and get into a home with zero down. And at that time, it was HUD homes, and you only needed $500. And people would come to us, and we would help them sometimes for years, repairing their credit, waiting till they had job stability, building their savings so that they could afford furniture when they got into their zero down home. And what's really awesome now is that we get calls from clients' kids who are now old enough to buy houses, and we're
Oh,
able.
cool.
So, really seeing that intergenerational wealth building and, making those connections that last a lifetime is really important. And yeah, the desire to help people is really what motivates me in that day to day.
It's interesting is we just bought our so I've been a renter for a really long time. We just finally bought our first home last year because I was looking at interest rates and we had seen the house we wanted and I was kind of concerned with where interest rates are going. They could go up soon. So, but man, that's a tough process. Like just going through that entire like loan process. Like you give them all the documents, you get to the end and they want more documents, and I was kind of like, man, when does this stop? Like that is a hard process if you don't have the right person shepherding you through that.
Yeah, and there can be unexpected surprises, and just if you don't have somebody who knows all the ins and outs and P's and Q's to dot the I's and cross the T's, you could end up in an unpredictable situation. It's definitely a very complicated process for sure.
I guess when you're looking at first time buyers, like what is the biggest advice you give them, in terms of things they should be considering when buying their first home? Like what is the biggest advice you give them?
Well, number one, check your free credit report. Everyone is entitled to a free credit report once a year, and you just go to www.annualcreditreport.com and they'll pull from all three bureaus. So you want to know what is on your credit report. We don't want any surprises. A lot of times people might have a little collection that they forgot about, or, you know, who knows, something on there that they totally were unaware of. So just for starters, knowing where you're at with your credit is a great peace of mind. Um, and then, of course, staying on top of your credit. So, I've got a lot of little tips to improve your credit score. So, for example, if you call your creditors and find out what date they report to the bureaus, then you make sure that you make your payment several days before that date. Then you will have the benefit of them reporting your actual balance after you've paid your balance. So let me brief.
Mm.
So I have a lot of people who say, "Well, I pay my credit card bill every month. I max it out and then I pay the whole balance every month." Well, if they pay the balance on the 15th, but the company reports it to the bureau on the 12th, they just reported your maxed out balance. So
Mm. So you've got to kind of beat them to the punch there so that they don't report you as like 100% like maxed.
exactly, because they're not in the business of helping you have a better credit score. They're actually in the business
Mm-hmm.
of helping you have a worse credit score, because the worse your credit score is, the more interest they can charge you. So they
Mm-hmm.
don't really want you to have a good credit score. They want you to max out your cards and pay them the minimum payment, and then they can keep giving you more credit cards with higher and higher interest rates. Um, Another tip for buyers is don't buy any, don't open any new accounts during this process. I've had a lot of people come and tell me about the new car that their husband just bought right before we closed escrow, or, a new account for some furniture that they're so excited to buy. And the lender's going to check your credit again before the end of the transaction to make sure your debt ratio hasn't changed. So almost all of the advice I could give to first time buyers is in regards to being careful with your credit in one way or another.
Do you think that's not something that we're like taught enough in school? Because I feel like, like once I got out in the world, like I had to learn so much about that. I'm in my mid 30s now, so like, what I understood at 20 is so much different than what I understand at 35. But do you think that's something that's not covered enough in school?
Oh, absolutely. I think every single high schooler would benefit from having a basic home buying and credit education class. I feel like in the old days there was home economics, and maybe they at least taught you how to balance your checkbook or something. But
I know in my high school, I went to a Catholic high school, so I think it's like the offerings are like slightly different. But like I was one of the last classes to get offered, or last graduating classes to get offered. Like it was called money management, and they showed you how to use a checkbook and stuff like that. But like I just think that it's been forgotten about, and it's like vital.
I agree. I mean, I remember like a day in math class calculating interest or learning about compound interest, or, but there's not enough information out there for people to really be aware of how it works. And just understanding how your credit score works is such a huge relief when you know how much control you have over it, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, Well, we've talked about credit scores and first-time buyers, and I'm interested to find like because you've seen people through this whole process. Like, what are some of the biggest mistakes that other than like making that purchase after they're getting close to closing? But I guess what other mistakes do you see buyers making that they're just forgetting about?
wow. Well, I mean, for one thing, I don't see buyers make a lot of mistakes because I work with great real estate agents who
Hmm.
educate their buyers. So that's really one of the things is all comes back to education.
Mm-hmm.
So, if the buyer knows what to expect during the process because their agent has sat them down and, outlined the process, um, then and set their expectations. So I guess one thing that buyers get a lot of heartbreak break from is, their expectations exceeding their budget or something. So I guess it's really just having that honest relationship with an agent who can guide you along and give you the proper expectations, so that, when you go to that home inspection, you don't really think that the seller is going to fix every single one of the 92 problems with the house. Like they're going to fix the um, health and safety issues, the things that are
Mm-hmm.
going to make the loan not close. So I think it's a lot of what I'm getting at is it has to do with expectations. And
Mm-hmm.
so if we're walking into this process that we've never been in before, we really have no idea what to expect. So working with an agent and a lender who can let you know what to expect and educate you about the market and how the process works. So I'm in California right now, and in California and nationwide really, we've had unprecedented increases in housing costs, and I think we're at 19% a year this past year with the increase
Wow.
in costs. So um, yeah, just knowing what to expect when you write an offer. I have people that want to offer 375 on a house that's 400,000. Like uh, in a different market, that's a great plan. Offer the seller less and see if they'll maybe come back with a counter offer. But in this market, we're seeing homes go for 100,000 over the list price. So,
That's what's really interesting. It was what was interesting in our process is like I know like we're in New Jersey, and one of the things that was wild is the house we bought. They did like a coming soon thing on the internet, and like I know we were there on a Saturday for the open house. It went on the market on Monday, and we had our offer in that Monday, and there were 10 other offers day one, and they were all like way past the asking price. It's like seems to be like really a seller's market right now because people are like really looking for these houses.
it definitely is, and we're seeing a real lack of inventory. So
Mm-hmm.
the COVID has really done a lot of interesting things to the real estate market. So, for one thing, people don't really want a bunch of strangers coming into their house at all. And
Hmm.
hopefully now things, that'll be changing now that the restrictions are being lifted and, everything's kind of getting back to normal. But I think that and then the people working from home and the remote working has caused a lot of interesting changes with that. So, yeah, if there's only 10 houses for sale in your whole zip code and 1,000 people want them, you're going to see bidding wars and multiple offers and tons of crazy cash over the asking price. It's been a
And
wild.
I guess like bringing I guess the kind of the COVID into that, and I know we're hopefully at the end of that, but how has the market changed in your opinion since you've had to deal with a lot of that? Has it just been the prices rising too, or what else have you seen in that area?
Well, it's been a combination of things. It's been the prices rising, it's been the interest rates historically low, and the lack of inventory. And then also, uh, the lender guidelines have changed, sometimes
Hmm.
daily. Sometimes the interest rates fluctuated wildly from day to day, kind of at the beginning. They've stabilized quite a bit and they are definitely creeping up. But
That's interesting too, because we started our process at 2.78, and I think by the end we were at like three even. And I remember telling my parents, and they like they were telling me about what they paid in the 80s, and it was like 10% or something. So it's like wildly different.
oh, yeah, even into the teens in the 80s, the interest rates before a lot of regulations came along were insane. Um, But the underwriting guidelines had to change too. So a lot
Hmm.
of people lost their jobs, and the lenders became a lot more nervous, a lot more conservative with the money. So, a lot of self employed borrowers had a harder time getting financing. And luckily, all of that is kind of coming back to normal. We're seeing a lot of our options coming back that we were missing there for a while. Some of the down payment assistance programs went away for a little while. So that's one thing I love being able to do is help with down payment assistance. And we don't have the $500 down HUD homes anymore, but we do have zero down options where all the buyer needs is their earnest money deposit and a combination of grant and uh, zero payment, zero interest, second financing covers your down payment.
Well, Stephanie, we talked a little bit about interest rates, and the economy is changing like a lot right now. We're seeing some drastic changes. Where do you think interest rates are going?
Well, I don't see them going back down nearly as low as they were. Obviously, everyone has heard the Fed predicting raising the rates 3 times this year. So now I think the new thing that we hadn't really figured into this maybe a week ago is the ongoing unsettling news in the world politics. So,
Yeah, the price of oil is like I think today it was like $115 a barrel. It was up like 15 bucks from yesterday. So it's like everything's going up very quickly.
yeah, and I mean, I don't have any experience with knowing what interest rates do when you're on the brink of World War III, like, or whatever
Yeah,
we're on the brink of.
sure.
So I don't see this being sustainable in any way. In California, the housing cost, like for example, I bought a house in 1997 for 111,000 and the same house now is worth about 650,000 and incomes haven't gone up that much. So my rate in 97 was 7.75 and now the interest rates are in the threes. So what happens if the interest rates go back up into the sevens and then the prices are not in the 100,000 range? So I see a lot of um, first time buyers having a harder time getting into the market in the future due to interest rates and inflation and everything. And now, while the getting's still good, I definitely see a lot of people calling to try to hurry up and get in there. People who missed out over the past year or so because they didn't quite have long enough on the job or whatever the case may be. Um, they are scrambling now to try to get in while the getting's still good.
Well, Stephanie, I want to get back to something we were talking a little bit earlier. As you were talking about, agents that were good at managing expectations and working with good first-time home buyers. I think one of the hardest things to do can be like, as a buyer, finding that right buyer's agent. I know for me, like, I had went through a friend to find our agent, and I actually used that agent to help sell my parents' house. And when that went well, she helped us buy our house. How does somebody locate their agent the first time? Like what kind of advice do you give on that?
I definitely recommend that you ask your friends and family for referrals. So,
Hmm.
if they've worked with a good agent, they might be able to clue you into someone. And then, of course, the internet is a great place to look. So maybe you're relocating and you don't have an agent in the place that you're moving to. Certainly, the internet is a great asset for that. And of course, if you do have a local agent, oftentimes they can refer you to an agent in the area that you're looking to move into. But definitely check their stats on the internet.
Cool. Well, Stephanie, I've really enjoyed this conversation today. I think we've really helped some people to feel a little bit more certain about that lending environment. So if they want to find out more about you and if they're interested in connecting with you, how's the best way for them to do that?
Well, I've got a website at www.stefaniboyd.com, and that's spelled like Gwen Stefani, Stefani. So, and I can always be reached at 916-215-9811.
Very cool. Well, Stephanie Boyd, thank you so much for hanging out with me today.
All right, thanks for having me, Jeremy. It was nice chatting with you.